Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. I'm your host, Joe Hamilton, along with Scott Tobin. Scott, how are you doing tonight, man, on this frigid night?
I'm all right, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I walked outside, and there's at least on my driveway, 6 inches of snow. Going to add to that tomorrow. I think here, 1 to 3 inches. What are they saying up by you?
Yeah, basically same thing, 1 to 3 inches. The big snow tomorrow is going to be down south. Cape Girardeau, that area is supposed to get 6, 7, 8 inches again tomorrow.
Well, and that's a good thing because, frankly, I'd like to get out of this house sooner or later. At least get some grocery shopping done, do some stuff like that. But you know what? You got to make do with what you have, especially being stuck inside. Scott, you actually played a little bit in the snow last night. Did you go out today?
I was outside today quite a bit, yeah. It was nice out today, actually. I mean, it was cold, but the sun was out, so it didn't feel as cold today. I
walked outside tonight, and I'll tell you what, it wasn't as bad as I thought, as I was told by my dad last night how bad it was. So, I got to go out and shovel tomorrow a little bit, so hopefully it's not too freezing outside, but it will be. So I just got to dress accordingly, right?
Yeah, it's going to be like 20 tomorrow. It was 4 below this morning.
Yeah, I mean, this is Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Canada level cold. So, I mean, we don't usually get winters like this, and we were kind of spoiled with the winter we were getting. To be honest here. So, I'll take this, I guess. So, we got a big show tonight. We're going to talk a lot of NFL rumors, whether it be trade or free agency. I got a question about why we don't see any more like old timers days. You used to see that with the Yankees. I just watched an old one today. I'll talk about that later. And let's just start out first, Scott. There were all 3 area basketball teams were in action tonight. The first one I want to talk about is Mizzou. This is 3 in a row now. This is getting borderline embarrassing. I mean, you lost to a 5-8 conference. A 5-8 team in conference play in Georgia. Just talk about that, man, because I was disgusted by maybe 10 minutes left in the fourth. They were not helping themselves.
No, they didn't play well tonight. They definitely didn't play well tonight. I mean, they had a 13-point lead, in the second half, and they blew it. They took ill-advised 3-point shots. They looked scared as Georgia started to make a run, and they looked timid as the game got close. It looked like guys didn't want to take shots, didn't want to make plays. They turned the ball over too many times. And, like I said, you have a 13-point lead in the fourth quarter, and you end up losing by 10. So you get outscored by 23 points in the second half. That just can't happen, even in a conference game. And again, you didn't have Jeremiah Tillman tonight. He should be back on Saturday dealing with family issues, a death in the family. But, just on the second half.
Yeah, you just can't have that happen. I mean, look, Georgia was at home, but it's not like there was any kind of advantage knowing with no fans. Being on your court, I guess, is somewhat of an advantage. But for me, this game should not have been close in my mind. It was an under 500 SEC team in the SEC. You need to roll over these teams as much as you can because come tournament time, if you get knocked out early, your coach's job is in jeopardy. And I have to say right now, Scott, that his job is in jeopardy in Columbia. I have to at this point.
It's not in jeopardy. Like we talked about last night, he's got another year or so. I mean, it's frustrating. There is a group of Mizzou fans that want him gone that have for a couple of years. And we talked the other night about, stretches like this have been an issue the last couple of years where they play bad like this. But again, like we said, you have to look at the fact that Tillman wasn't there, who's your big threat in the middle of the court, one of the best big men in the country this year. So that's huge. But like they kept saying during the game, if there's a team in the SEC that can handle this, it is Mizzou because of what they've done with their schedule. The teams they've beat early in the year, non-conference wins against big-name schools like Oregon, like Illinois. Those wins are going to help them even though they're having these struggles right now. And you have to finish strong. But, hopefully they turn around, they get Tillman back on Saturday, and there's still time to right the ship.
What are the next few games on the schedule, Scott?
They finish up the schedule. They've got 4 more regular season games in the Big 12 and the SEC, and so you got to get through those games, and then you've got tournament time. So they're down to the nitty gritty. They just have to. They really have to get it going here in the next couple of weeks before you get to the tournament, because Selection Sunday is 3 weeks from Sunday. So you've got like I said, you've got 4 games left in conference, and then you've got conference tournament, and then it's selection time. So you've got to get Tillman back, and you've got to right the ship and get things going here.
You have to right the ship. And Scott, this is a team that could end up out of the top 25 rankings if they don't watch it. I mean, they were at 20 coming into this game, and I wonder if this would drop them down at this point to, 28, 29, because they lost to a non-ranked team. Anytime you lose to a non-ranked team, you think you kind of take a plunge, right?
Well, and they did. They dropped 10 spots from last week. So, if they can bounce back and win Saturday, hopefully they stay around where they're at right now. They may fall into the lower 20s, 22, 23. Hopefully they stay in the top 25. But again, you've got time to fix that and get ready for tournament time.
Yeah, you got time to fix it, but at that time, you're going to get Tillman back, like you said, so it should help. But you can't have losses like this. Now, Illinois and SLU, on the other hand, they are taking care of business, at least in the first half of their game. Talk about that.
Yeah, SLU's playing. They're both hosting their games. SLU's playing LaSalle, who LaSalle beat SLU a couple of weeks ago, which was SLU's first game back from their COVID break. But SLU looks good. They're up by 18 at the half. Just went to halftime just a few minutes ago. They're getting scoring from all kinds of people. Fred Thatch having a good game, a guy that I covered quite a bit when I lived in Sykeston when he was down there. Thatch has 10 points in that first half. SLU's playing well. Same thing with Illinois. Illinois is up on Northwestern by 12 at the half. Iodasuma with only 4 points at the half. So he's gotten off to a slow start, but you expect him to have a big second half. And, both of them should be able to take care of those opponents at home.
Yeah, and it's nice for Illinois, too, because when you have Dasumu only having 12 points, when you have guys like that, and actually single digits in points, what am I thinking? When you have guys like that not producing and you're still winning games, that's huge.
Well, and he started off slow in their game Friday night against Nebraska. He only had, I think, 12 points at the half, and then he scored 22 in the second half. So he's kind of gotten a reputation as being a slow starter and then really taking off in the second half. But they should be able to handle Northwestern pretty easily. And SLU looks like they're on a roll now. They've kind of shaken off the rust. And they should be able to hold on, big lead against LaSalle. So hopefully SLU and Illinois both advance again here tonight.
Yeah, also, Scott, when we brought up Mizzou earlier, at this point, I'm almost starting to think SLU is the better team in this area, because at least between Mizzou and SLU, just because SLU seems to be a much more rounded team as of right now. Am I wrong on that, or am I reading too much into it?
I mean, you got to look at the difference in the conferences between the A-10 and the SEC too. The SEC is a much deeper conference than the A-10 is. There is more talent on a lot of these teams in the SEC than there are in the A-10. That's just how it is. I mean, SEC is a power conference. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a difference in opponents when you get in conference play. But no, SLU's good. We've talked about it all year. We think they can make a deep run in this tournament. So they are a very well-rounded team.
So, Scott, I don't know if you got to watch this, but I was watching the Dayton, Rhode Island game.
Yep.
What an instant classic that was. I mean, it takes 2 overtimes to get a victor in this one. Did you see any of it?
I watched a little bit of it. I was flipping around looking at some other stuff, but yeah, I kept checking scores. I mean, both of those teams have a history of being good programs, especially Dayton. Rhode Island kind of goes through stretches where they're good for a few years and then they struggle. But yeah, anytime it's a double overtime game and a conference game, that's a fun game to watch for sure.
What are some of the other games, some of the other teams you're paying attention to as we get closer to conference tournaments?
I mean, you're just looking around. Are you talking like A-10 teams, or are you talking just in general?
In general?
I mean, you got to look at pretty much everybody in the country. You're kind of watching teams that have been bad all year. You're looking at the teams like Kansas and Duke that are starting to show some signs of life all of a sudden. Kentucky's played a little bit better. And then you look at the power teams. You look at the teams like Ohio State and Michigan, the Gonzagas and Baylors, the teams like that are really playing well this year. So, it's an interesting field this year. It's going to be a really interesting tournament. So you just kind of watching everything to see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's for sure. In other news, there's going to be no fans at All-Star Weekend. If any NBA sanctioned event, there are going to be no tickets sold. Are you shocked by this at all, or is this the times we're living in?
No, I'm not really shocked because you've got people coming in from all over the place. So not really shocked because they're still going to get huge TV ratings. So not really surprised.
I think you're going to get more TV ratings because you won't have fans, right. Obviously. So it'll be interesting to see how they do things with, from a TV production point of view. It ought to be fun in terms of that. And I find it interesting, Scott. We talked about it last night, but I want to bring it up again. The fact that you're doing the skills competition and the game on the same day, does that shock you at all? Or does that, is there a reasoning behind it? What is your reasoning behind it, Scott?
It's condensing everything into one day so you don't have guys going out, having, playing in a skills tournament and then having the opportunity to go out that night and do something and then come back and possibly spread stuff. It's just trying to condense everything, make everything one day, give players less of an opportunity to be out around other people and stuff like that. So it's just a safety precaution, basically.
So it's a good thing, I'm kind of glad the mayor of Atlanta actually came out and had concerns about it. So it's awesome the NBA is being proactive about it, and it should be fun, man. We got a month until that, Scott?
Yeah, something like that. 3 weeks, a month, somewhere in there. I'm not sure exactly what the date is right off the top of my head.
I can't wait to see what poster dunk we're going to see this year because there's going to be one, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, the dunk contest has kind of lost some of its luster from years past because you don't get the superstars a lot of times. I mean, it used to be, you'd get the Jordans, the Dominique Wilkins, the Blake Griffins. A lot of time anymore, the guys that are in the dunk contest are guys that you've never even heard of. So, it's lost a lot of its luster. The three-point shooting competition is almost a bigger deal than the dunk contest anymore.
Scott, and that's funny because you still have guys like Zach LaVine in the NBA. So you think he'd bring that back a little bit, especially what he did. I forget the year, and I think you know what I'm talking about, Scott. I think it was him and somebody else. They had an instant classic of a dunk contest.
Yeah, but I mean, even that's not that huge of a name either. You're just not getting the superstars in the dunk contest that are immediately going to draw people to watch. Whereas in the 3-point contest, you may get a Steph or a Clay, or you get the big name guys out there in that contest where you're not getting those guys. You're not drawing the big names to the dunk contest like you used to.
Yeah, you're not, and it's sad because I would just go on YouTube and watch dunk contest after dunk contest because the creativity, and especially by Dwight Howard, the Superman Dwight Howard, those were the fun dunk contests. What was your favorite dunk growing up, Scott?
When I was a kid, it was Michael. He only did it a couple of times, but the famous poster that everybody sees where he jumped from the free throw line and was still going up as he got to the basket is just, one of the most famous posters of all time. And, you can use all the Dwight Howard props and everything, but nothing's going to beat that. That or Dominique Wilkins windmill dunk. The old ones are the classics.
Yeah, that is very true, Scott. There's a couple things in Major League Baseball, at least one. Kevin Pillar. This is a guy who is too good in my mind to jump around from team to team. He's been on 4, and now he's going to the New York Mets on a 1-year deal. Are you shocked he hasn't stuck with the team? Because this is a very good player.
He's had some injury history, and he's a great defensive outfielder. His bat's been a little bit inconsistent a few years here lately. So not really surprised. He's getting a little bit older. But he's a good pickup for the Mets. It'll be interesting to see how they use him.
It will definitely be interesting because that guy can make some Superman catches. He almost reminds me of a Sam Fold. Is that a good comparison, at least in the outfield?
Yeah, similar, I would say.
So yeah, it'll be a fun spring training. Spring training starts tomorrow. Hear anything on the Cardinal front, Scott? Any rumors? Anything?
Not really. There's not a whole lot publicly out there. I still think they're looking around. You keep hearing they'd like to bring in a left-handed backup infielder. There's not a whole lot of those guys left. I wouldn't be shocked to see them come to terms with a minor league deal with an old friend in Daniel Descalso. He's still out there. He'd be the kind of guy that they could definitely use, that could be that backup shortstop, could play all over the infield. That wouldn't surprise me if that happens. And then, I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks. There's still pitchers out there that I would be interested in if I'm them. We'll see what happens. I'm still shocked. I'm shocked that Jake Odorizzi and Taijuan Walker haven't signed yet, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens, and it ought to be a fun spring training. That starts tomorrow. You're going to probably hear a lot more news tomorrow in terms of how guys are staying in shape, how they did during this off season where they pretty much had to quarantine. I mean, they had to figure out ways to work out without being in a gym. I'm sure most of them had their home gyms and stuff like that, but it'll be fun. So we're going to take a quick break, and right after the break, Scott's going to talk some NFL free agency and some trade rumors. So keep it here on Crunch Time on ASTV Productions. So welcome back, everybody. And Scott, how many rumors have you been hearing on the NFL front at this point?
I mean, there's a lot of rumors flying around. I mean, you're hearing the big rumors, which, is more hearsay than anything else. There's the speculation, the whispers that, maybe Russell Wilson will get moved. There's the speculation that, maybe Dallas moves on from Dak Prescott. But the stuff is getting closer. It sounds like the Bears have jumped to the forefront as the leading candidate to get Carson Wentz. Sounds like they're more likely to have him land there than Indianapolis is now, which that would be an interesting move, because then you wonder where Mitchell Trubisky goes. Although there will be teams interested in Trubisky, whether it's a starter or as a backup. Another move that'll be pretty interesting, it sounds like the Raiders and the Washington football team are getting close to a deal for Marcus Mariota, which I think Mariota could go to Washington and be a pretty good quarterback. I've always liked him. He's talented. I think he got a raw deal in Tennessee. But with that defense in Washington, and they've got some weapons at receiver and tight end. I think Mariota, if Washington drafts well, I think Mariota could do well there. There's a couple other things. There was a rumor that Deshaun Watson was spotted having dinner with a bunch of Miami Dolphin players the other day, which started the rumors. Is Deshaun going to the Dolphins? I don't think that's going to happen, but that was a hot rumor today. And then the J.J. Watt stuff is another one that's picking up steam. There were some rumors that Tampa was really interested. I've heard that DeAndre Hopkins actually went to J.J. Watt's house and was recruiting him to Arizona. So, yeah, those are the big ones. The Mariota thing, Carson Wentz getting closer to finding a new home, and then J.J. Watt are kind of the big ones that are seemingly getting closer.
Let's start with the Carson Wentz to Chicago, if that happens, which it looks more and more likely that will happen. How does he fit that system? Because I like that move if Chicago's able to pull that off.
Again, if he goes to Chicago, who's he throwing the ball to?
I mean, you still got the draft, Scott. I mean, I don't know what their draft position looks like. If they want to trade up to get more draft picks, I don't know. But, Scott, I mean, they could still build through this draft. I mean, there are some talented receivers in this draft.
Yeah, but you're not going to trade up and get more picks. You trade up, you're going to lose picks.
Or trade down, excuse me.
Yeah, but, I mean, right now they really have nothing. Their one good wide receiver last year is a free agent. It doesn't sound like he's coming back to Chicago and Robinson. So, if Carson Wentz goes to Chicago, they've got to build some weapons around him, and they have to fix their offensive line. So there would be big questions there, but it'll be interesting to see what they do.
It will be very interesting. And another interesting rumor that you brought up was the Marcus Mariota to Washington rumor, and I feel like that would suit them well in Washington. He's a a quarterback that can run. I need to stop saying running quarterback, but a quarterback that can run, and that's the right system for him. But they need to protect him like they didn't protect another running quarterback, and that was RG3. Do you think they could do, if they make that trade, could they do it right the second time around?
Well, yeah, and I mean those are two totally different coaching staffs. Ron Rivera is the coach of Washington now, who, Marcus Mariota would fit in Ron Rivera's system because Cam Newton was Rivera's quarterback. They went to the Super Bowl. He knows how to build his offensive system around that type of quarterback that has the ability to scramble and throw the ball. So, yeah, I think that would be a good mix. And like I said, with that Washington defense, we saw, them get the Washington football team to the playoffs. If you bring in a quarterback that can be productive, I think they've got a real shot at making a run, especially in the NFC East, which we know is not very good.
Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. With all the free agents out there, pick a handful of them and place them with teams. Go ahead, because I know you like to play this role.
Oh man, that's actually pretty tough. I'm gonna go. Let's see, where do I want to go? I am gonna put Mariota in Washington. I think that's where he ends up. I like J.J. Watt in Cleveland. I think J.J. Watt with the Browns would be that pass rusher that they missed. So I like that. Another spot that Watt would work really well for Watt, I think, although I don't know that they have the cap room for him, would be the Chiefs. The Chiefs could really use J.J. Watt, but I really like Watt in Cleveland. Davion Clowney's another guy on the defensive front that I could see going to a place like Arizona. Arizona needs a couple of impact players on the defensive line. I think Clowney there would be a really good move. Yeah, those are some big ones. I'm trying to think about some of these other quarterbacks where I think they would go. I kind of like the idea, and I brought this up before. I kind of like the idea of Mitchell Trubisky going to Dallas. I think Trubisky in Dallas, whether Dak's there or not for a year, Trubisky could sit and learn and try to figure out that Cowboy offense. And then if Dak moves on, you have Trubisky with all those weapons in Dallas. So I like that idea. And then some of those big quarterbacks, again, like we've talked about, everyone wants to know where Deshaun Watson's going and where Russell Wilson's going. And I've said it a bunch lately. I don't think either one of those guys move. So I think that's kind of the group that I would look at right now, honestly, as some of the bigger free agents that are going to move around.
What about a J.J. Watt playing with his brothers in Pittsburgh? Do you see that happening at all? And is Ben Roethlisberger gonna go back there at this point? It's not a guarantee.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Pittsburgh can make it work with Ben financially. They're really, really over the cap. So they've got to do a lot of restructuring with his contract to make Ben fit under the salary cap. And then, I'm sure JJ would like to go to Pittsburgh and play with his brothers. I'm not sure that they can make that work financially either, although I'm sure he would take less money to go there. Yeah, I can see it. Like I said, I think Cleveland would be a really good spot, and that would be interesting because he would be playing against his brothers twice a year. That would be a real rivalry. So I think that would be something he would actually enjoy probably.
Cleveland, if they make that move, would earn mega bonus points with me because I love J.J. Watt, and I feel like he'd work in that defensive system. Deshaun Watson, you brought that up, and you're saying he's not going to go anywhere. Scott, I almost feel like if he doesn't go anywhere, and I've said this before, he's stuck. He's stuck because they're not going to win there. They don't have anybody for him to throw to. And, I mean, I don't know, Scott. He has to go somewhere in my mind. They need to drop that price. They have to. Well,
if you're Houston, you don't drop that. Why would you drop that price if you're Houston? Because you're not going to – why would you trade a guy who everybody says is one of the best quarterbacks in the league and take less for him? you got to remember, and everybody says, oh, he's stuck. And I agree. He's not in a good spot. But Deshaun Watson signed that contract. Nobody made him sign an extension. He was there. He knew Bill O'Brien had already moved DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins wasn't there anymore. He knew that when he signed that contract. So Deshaun Watson decided to take the money and sign a long-term contract on a bad team with a bad coach in a bad organization. So whatever happens to him at this point, it's kind of his own making because he decided to take the money.
He decided to take the money and run. And I got to say, Lester chimes in, Watt is seriously considering the Browns. So, Scott, are you picking up on a report or were you just guessing there?
No, I know Cleveland would love to have him there. That was some talk. I'm a Browns fan, as you know, and I have friends that are in the Cleveland area. So I know Browns fans that have been talking about that, hoping J.J. Watt would get released because they need that defensive end. Even if he just comes in and plays on passing downs to give them pass rush. But yeah, I think J.J. Watt, just the way he plays football, he would be a perfect fit in Cleveland.
Since we're on the top of the NFL, I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to now. How many years left does a guy like Aaron Rodgers have in terms of being a Super Bowl contender with Green Bay? Like, how many more years can we say they are Super Bowl contenders because they're one of the top echelon teams of the NFC? And I know the NFC is not that good, Scott, but they're still up there.
The Packers can make moves all around him. I'd say, look at Tom Brady. So what's Aaron Rodgers, 35, 36?
Yeah.
I think he's got 3 or 4 years at least left. What are the Packers going to do to make themselves better around him? I don't know. They still need to make some moves to make that team better. They need more weapons at the receiver position. They need to fix their defense a little bit. They could use some offensive line help. But they're going to be in the hunt in that division, you would think, because Detroit's not really good. They traded Matthew Stafford. We're not sure what Jared Goff is. Minnesota's talked about trading Kirk Cousins. The Bears are a year or two away, no matter what they do, because they've got too many holes on that team. So just by default, the Packers are the favorite in that division for the next few years anyway. If you add a couple of things, they can definitely be a playoff Super Bowl contender for the next 3 or 4 years, I would say.
You talked about free agents, but you didn't really mention wide receivers. I know there's a few good wide receivers that are in the free agent market. The Packers need that. They need a wide receiver. Do they go the free agent market, or will they go trade, or will they go draft? If they do get a receiver,
knowing the Packers' history and knowing what they do, they probably won't draft one until like the 6th round, because that's what they do. They did it. That's what they've done for the last 20 years. As a guy who was a huge Packer fan during Brett Favre's years, Brett and everybody in Green Bay begged for a superstar wide receiver for years. Randy Moss wanted to go to Green Bay, and Green Bay wouldn't pay him, and he ended up going to New England, and we know how that worked out. Favre was begging them to bring Randy Moss, and Randy Moss was begging the Packers to let him play with Brett Favre, and they wouldn't do it. So, if they get a wide receiver, I don't see them going free agency. I think it'll be the draft, and like I said, I don't see them going early for a wide receiver because last year was the year we thought they would do that with all the wide receivers that were high in that draft last year. They drafted a quarterback in the first round. So I don't see them. I see them taking I see them drafting a wide receiver at some point, but I don't think it's early. I don't see them making a trade or signing a wide receiver in free agency, at least not an impact wide receiver.
That's not what I want to hear, Scott. But as a Packer fan that thought this team was, going to go to the Super Bowl last year, especially how bad that NFC was. So I'd like them to, make a trade or two or a signing or two just to get them over the top in terms of weapons, because you're going to lose Aaron Jones. You're right at or over the cap. You're going to lose Jones. They
could restructure his contract, though. For that matter, you could go to Aaron. If you're that far over the cap, you could go to Aaron Rodgers and say, hey, look, we need to, you're making $35 or $36 million. If you really want to win, restructure your deal. Quarterbacks do that all the time. That's why the Patriots were able to win so many years, because Tom Brady never took the biggest contract and was always willing to rework his deal so that they could bring in other guys. So if Rodgers really wants to win, there's ways to work around that salary cap to bring in players to help you win and to keep guys.
Is Rodgers that kind of guy, though? He doesn't seem like a guy that would negotiate anything, really, in terms of a pay cut.
So if that's the case, if he's not willing to take $30 million instead of $35 million to keep your star running back or to bring in a wide receiver, how much does he really care about winning?
Yeah, I agree. I just don't see Rodgers at that point in his career making exceptions. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am, because I'd love to keep guys like Aaron Jones in the fold, because Aaron Jones is a beast. Aaron Jones is someone you need. And I don't think the Packers have anything behind them that they can really trot out there and say, hey, this is Aaron Jones' replacement.
Again, though, you can find running backs in the draft. I mean, Aaron Jones wasn't a high draft pick. You can find solid running backs, especially the way the league is now. You can find a good running back in the second or third round that's not going to cost you a ton of money. And a lot of teams are going that way. How often do you see high-priced running backs end up being on the free agent market because their team says, oh, we're not going to pay you, we'll just draft somebody new?
What is that signing bonus like? Speaking of draft, Scott, since we're on this conversation, how much is that signing bonus usually? Like, just to get into the league?
Well, it's changed. It's slotted now by the where you're drafted. It used to be that the number one pick, the number two pick, made ridiculous money. I mean, when the Rams drafted Sam Bradford, and he was kind of the end of that. Bradford came into the league and got a massive contract. They changed that the next year when they had the lockout, and they redid that. And so rookies coming into the league don't make the money that they used to, those high picks. So it's kind of slotted. And right off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly, but it kind of goes like the first pick there's between this many $1 million and this many million the second pick. It's kind of slotted with a $3 or $4 million range for each of those early picks, and then it kind of goes down from there as you go farther down into the draft.
Ooh, Theo chimes in here. This is an interesting comment. Rodgers lowers salary to bring in Watt and keep his running back too. 3 big pieces in Green Bay. Could you actually see that happening?
I mean, JJ went to school in Wisconsin. So, it's possible. I don't want it to see it happen, obviously, because I don't like Aaron Rodgers. But, and like I said, I was a huge Packer fan when Brett Favre was there. I just don't like Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, I mean, it could happen. But again, you have to be able to work with that cap and get Rodgers to make some moves and restructure his contract, and maybe get some other guys to restructure their contract. I don't know. Right off the top of my head, I don't know who else is free agents and what they need to do there. Who they have up. So, but yeah, it's definitely a possibility they can make something happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, and oh man, I'd like to see transparency with what the Packers want to do, because you saw some guys step up. You saw Valdez-Scantling step up a little bit. You saw St. Brown step up a little bit when they used him, and you know what Aaron Jones was. I'd just like to see one more piece. One more piece would maybe get them to the promised land, especially now that you have to deal with Tom Brady in Tampa for another year or two, maybe. So if you want to beat that team over there, you need to do everything possible to – am I wrong?
No, I mean, you do. You have to make moves. And, I mean, look at what Tampa's doing. Rob Gronkowski's basically said he doesn't even care if he gets paid if it lets everybody else come back to that team next year.
Super team.
But they're not. They're really, like we talked about the other night.
I know.
I mean, it's a group of guys that they had a bunch of talent there, and then they brought in some guys that there was a post on Facebook that said this time last year, Tom Brady was an over the hill free agent. Rob Gronkowski was retired, and Antonio Brown was in jail, and Leonard Fournette had been released. So it wasn't like they were a bunch of guys from Jacksonville, by the way. The Jaguars released him. So it wasn't like there were a bunch of guys that everybody was like, "Ooh, we want these guys on our team." It just happened to be the perfect landing spot, and it all molded together. And you've got to give Bruce Arians and Tom Brady both a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, you do. And I just brought up Super Team because no one's gonna beat that team now. I mean, the Saints, I don't know where they're gonna be. The Carolina Panthers, well, they're not good. I mean, they're all right, but they're not on that upper echelon of teams. Who's going to dethrone them in that division? I mean, that division's basically theirs, right?
Well, I mean, probably. They'd probably win the division, but that doesn't mean they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, you're still going to run into teams in the NFC, and we've seen how hard it is to repeat in the NFL. Who thought Kansas City was going to lose? There's a reason that no team's repeated in almost 10 years in the NFL now, because it's hard to do. You've got to stay healthy, and, it's not an easy thing to do because everybody comes out gunning for you after you've won. So, and the NFC is not going to be easy. Arizona's going to be better. Seattle could be better potentially, assuming Russell Wilson's there. San Francisco is going to be healthy. Somebody in the NFC East will be better. Presumably Dallas. Washington, gets a quarterback that could be tough. Your Packers are going to be good. The Bears could be better. I mean, it's not going to be a cakewalk to just say, oh, they're going back because, think about this. Last year, after the Chiefs-San Francisco Super Bowl, how many people said, oh, we're going to see a rematch? The 49ers are going to walk away with the NFC next year. They didn't even make the playoffs. So, and you got to remember, too, that, Brady's 43, Gronkowski's not young, Antonio Brown's not young. Lots of things can happen, injuries and stuff. It's possible that Tampa brings back the exact same team and doesn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, you are 100% right, and it's almost becoming an old folks' home there in Tampa. At least they got one last Super Bowl, and who knows? They could do it again next year, but it's going to be tougher. So we're going to take another quick break, and after the break, I'm going to basically ask the question, why are we seeing no more alumni games? Why aren't we seeing any more, old-timers days? Stick with us. We will be right back right after this. Welcome back to Crunch Time here on ASTV Productions. There's one thing that's been on my mind. Why aren't we seeing more old-timers games? Why aren't we seeing the alumni games in the NHL? Well, I mean, it just makes no sense because more, in my mind, they're important because more and more young people, like my age or younger, don't know history that well, don't know the history of the game that well. And I feel like things like that would help. You'd have a father and son in the stands. The son would talk to his father about, oh, what was this guy like back in your day? What was that guy like back in your day? Scott, you said something before the show. It makes sense. But why couldn't they still have old-timers games? Like, why couldn't you have – then you could televise it. It'd be so cool, man. But why aren't we seeing it?
Are you talking NHL or MLB?
I'm talking both. NHL, remember they used to do an alumni game, and they don't do it anymore? And Major League Baseball hasn't done an old-timers game since the Yankees did it a few years ago.
There's a couple of reasons. One reason, unfortunately, younger generation don't really care about history. We talk, if it's not something that they know or they've seen, then they're just not all that interested, unfortunately. And that's a big part of it, and that's sad. Talk to a young kid and ask them about baseball players, baseball history. Most of them, there'll be a few, but most of them don't know or don't care about players that played 20 or 30 years ago because it's just the generation we live in. Everything's right here, right now, and that's not something that happened in their lifetime. The other part of it is, and we talked about this a little bit off air, there's a lot of fantasy camps where fans can go participate in camps. The Cardinals do a lot of that. They do 3 or 4 a year. They do one in Jupiter. They do one at Busch Stadium. The last couple of years they've done one in Cooperstown, which would be freaking awesome to play old Cardinals. Ozzie and a bunch of those guys have been involved, and they've gone up and played on the fields in Cooperstown around the Hall of Fame, which would be absolutely amazing to do. But that's a lot of that because, they've got the fantasy camps and fans can go do that. And then kind of the NHL is the same way. The Blues do still play alumni games. If you listen, they talk about that all the time. And actually, I know they play at Centene quite a bit. The alumni plays, and actually Bill DeWitt III plays with the Blues alumni team. And they play people from all over the place in the St. Louis area in games. They do that all the time. And so there are alumni games. They're not at Savas. They're not before Blues games like they used to be, or at Busch Stadium before Cardinal games like they used to be. I mean, I remember going and seeing Lou Brock hit a home run at Busch Stadium in the 80s in an old-timers game at Busch Stadium off Al Raboski. But, they don't do that. But a lot of it, like I said, has to do with the fantasy camps, and they're doing other things in those aspects.
They are, and I understand that, but, your first reasoning, there has to be some kind of loophole there. There has to be a way to get these kids excited about where this team came from, what these guys did back then. There has to be another way for kids to get interested in the history. There has to be, Scott. I mean, we talk about the game evolving, with betting and everything else. Is there a way that maybe we could see down the road that things like this could come back and maybe make these kids excited?
You would hope so, but, how many kids have you ever talked to that are interested in any kind of history?
But how many kids that are interested in this game don't want to know about, where this game came from? I'm not talking 1800s. I get that. I totally understand that. I'm talking like 1960 on or 1950 on, something like that, just to give these kids an idea of how far this game's progressed.
Oh, I agree. They should. There's just doesn't seem to be that connection, that interest, and there's too many other things, and if they want to know, they can look it up on social media or see it. It's just easier for them. Everything's right here, right now. I don't want to have to sit and watch a 2-hour game or learn about these things when I can Google it and get 30 seconds of information in 5 minutes. It's a shame, but kids just a lot of times aren't interested in that kind of stuff right now. And hopefully there is a way to change that where you get that back. But I'm not really sure for an answer right now, Joe, honestly.
Wow, Scott, I got you stumped for once, huh?
I mean, you talk about that, people complain about, we don't want to go sit at a baseball game for 3 hours and watch a baseball game. If they're not going to watch a regular game for 3 hours, are they going to go when there's an old-timers game before and sit there for 5 hours because they're watching that first? Same thing with a hockey game. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying it's right, but it's just kind of the culture of the generation that we live in right now. We want everything fast, and we don't really want to have to think about anything,
It's sad, man, what this has become. I mean, you'd like to see advancement. You'd like to see advancement in trying to get these guys out there. The Hall of Fame is a big thing. I mean, I was watching something today, an old timers game from like 1994 or 1984. It was at RFK Stadium, and you had the guys like Bob Feller. You had, Roger Maris playing in this game. Countless other Hall of Famers. Johnny Bench a year after he retired, which, by the way, I can't believe he was even in an old timers game a year after he retired. I don't know if you saw that one, Scott. Do you know which one I'm talking about? They actually had NFL on Westwood One pregame host George Grand as the play-by-play announcer, which was pretty cool. Seeing how young these guys were. Hank Aaron in this game, countless others. Have you know which one I'm talking about?
I'm not right off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, there used to be a lot of those. And, unfortunately, yeah, we just don't see a whole lot of that. Like I said, it's kind of evolved to more of the fantasy camp things and those kind of situations, which is kind of a shame, honestly. Hopefully kids start to get more interested in the history of teams. But I mean, you hear that even with young players. How many times have you heard somebody say, "Oh, so and so came up to the Cardinals and they had to learn about who Blue Brock was once they got here. They had to find out. They had to do history and find out who Bob Gibson was. And then once they researched it, they thought it was really cool that they knew him, but they had no idea before they got here. Because a lot of kids play sports, but they don't really dig into the history or know a whole lot about it, other than the fact that they like to play the game.
Scott, this ties in well, and I'm glad you brought that up because Colton Wong came out with a video today. It came out today, basically thanking the city of St. Louis. And in that video, he says, "I didn't know where St. Louis was on a map before I got here." That tells you a lot. And Scott, since I brought that up, what were your reactions to that? What a consummate pro he was, thanking the whole city. He was well liked in this city.
He was by a lot of people. I mean, there were a lot of fans in St. Louis that never forgave Colton Wong for getting picked off first base in the 2000 World Series.
Let it go.
Well, I'm not saying I did. I'm not saying me. I did, but there are a lot of people that never liked him because of that never forgave him because of that. That and those are fans. I agree. Colton Wong gave his heart to this city. And if you want to see the video, go to our Crunch Time page because it's on there. We shared it earlier today, so you can go there and check that video out. And yeah, Colton Wong was a student of the game. He talked many, many times about loving the opportunity to be around Bob Gibson and Lou Brock. And, he got a chance to meet Stan before he went, and Red and all of those guys. And, that's something special that we have in St. Louis that a lot of teams don't have either. A lot of teams don't have the history around all the time. You don't have all of these guys, that come out at spring training. And so a lot of teams, a lot of fan bases don't know their history because their history is not there. They don't trot them out on opening day and show videos, and you don't have that connection to the past that St. Louis does. It's part of what makes this such an amazing sports town with the Cardinals and the Blues.
Yeah, I like when a player leaves. There's no hard feelings ever. I mean, you see countless people, and you see this a lot in other places too, where they thank the whole city. I mean, hell, Nolan Arenado took out a full page thanking the city of Colorado, which obviously he was one of the main catalysts for that organization. So, I like to see that. I would have loved to see Colton Wong back in a Cardinal uniform. Don't like the fact that he's in Milwaukee, I guess, but you know what? Kudos to him. Hopefully he has a good rest of his career, and hopefully he does well. Maybe not against the Cardinals, of course. We all know how this works, Scott. How many players have gone to other places and killed the Cardinals?
Yeah, and he's definitely gonna be motivated to do that. And Colton's always hit really well in Milwaukee, and that's such a hitter's ballpark. It wouldn't shock me if Colton hit 15 or 20 home runs a year the next couple of years in Milwaukee, because we all know that he's got that kind of power in him. So, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Colton wasn't a 15 to 20 homer guy in Milwaukee. Yeah, it's sad. You hate to have him in the division. I'm just glad he didn't end up in Chicago because there were rumors that the Cubs were interested.
Oh, that would suck. It's going to be weird, that's for sure, when he comes back. I'm sure they're going to have a highlight package for him. The one play that sticks out for me for Colton Wong is the play that he made, I think it was 3 years ago in Los Angeles. Ball goes up the middle. He dives for it. There's no way he's making this play in my mind. There's no way. And he throws out the guy at first. That was probably the most unbelievable play I think I've ever seen him make. And I think you know which play I'm talking about.
He made a lot. One that sticks out for me would have been 2019 at Busch Stadium against the Cubs. The Cardinals and Cubs were battling for first place. Adam Wainwright was pitching deep into a game. Had a shutout going, and I believe it was Anthony Rizzo hit a little pop fly into shallow right field, and Colton ran probably 200 or 300 yards and made a leaping snow cone catch that kept the shutout going, kept Adam in the game. It was in like the 8th inning. Just one of those unbelievable moments. And I'll never forget the home run he hit, the walk-off home run he hit in the 2014 NLCS against the Giants at Busch Stadium. He had some huge moments. Colton hit a ton of walk-off home runs over the years for the Cardinals and was clutch. They're going to miss him. They're going to miss him in that leadoff spot as well.
Yeah, I will miss him. That's for sure. And another Cardinal note, real quick. You had Rangel Ravelo signed a 1-year minor league contract in Los Angeles for the Angels. And you know what? I don't think this guy got much of a chance, really. I mean, he played a little bit here and there, but he had a lot of power. I liked Rangel Ravelo.
Yeah, I mean he's a minor league journey guy. He's 28, almost 29 years old. Hopefully he makes a roster. I'm not sure that he will. He may end up playing in the minor leagues, but hopefully he can hang on for a while and keep playing and make some money. He had some good moments, but he's just one of those journey guys. A little bit lesser version of Jose Martinez.
A little bit lesser version of Jose Martinez. Scott, anything to add before we get out of here tonight?
So real quick, I'm just going to go back to the Cardinal leadoff spot because you shared something today and asked me a question. There was some question about would the Cardinals change their lineup and have Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt hitting second and third in their lineup to start the season if Tommy Edman struggles. There's absolutely no chance that happens. There's a better chance that Matt Carpenter's hitting leadoff all year than Goldschmidt and Arenado hit second and third in this lineup.
Yeah, I basically saw that, and I'm shocked you didn't roast me for that right in that comment section. That would have been hilarious if you would have done that. I wouldn't have gotten mad because after going back and listening to that, yeah, not my thoughts at all. I mean, come on. Yeah, Carlson hitting first? No. I mean that. Go ahead.
I can see a scenario where he may hit leadoff every once in a while, but even if he does, those guys, you're still not moving those guys up. Hopefully either Tommy Edman or Harrison Bader can figure it out and be the leadoff hitters. But I do think we're going to see Matt Carpenter play quite a bit of second base, especially against right-handed pitching because Carpenter struggles against left-handed pitching, and for some reason Tommy Edman has really struggled against right-handed pitching, especially last year. He hit under 200 against right-handed pitching. So I think against righties, you're going to see Carpenter play a lot of second base, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's your leadoff hitter on those days.
That would not be shocking at all. I just don't think you would want to put Carlson up in the first spot because you're basically shortening your lineup.
But, I mean, again, you can move stuff around. You could go Carlson 1. You can go Carlson 2-1 and then put an Edman in there if you had to. But I think in those cases, if Carlson's hitting leadoff, Carpenter's probably your second spot. If Edman's struggling like that, I still have a lot of questions about Tommy Edman's ability to hit in the major leagues. Honestly,
yeah, we've seen guys come up and light the world on fire in 1 month, and Cardinal fans are like, "Yay, he's our new savior." No, I mean, look, how many times have I said I'll eat crow because I've said I like Tommy Edman. You remember when he first came up and was tearing it up that first month, and you were the one, Scott. You're like, Joe, temper your expectations, temper your enthusiasm there.
And a lot of people are like, "Oh, you don't like Tommy Edman." I don't have a problem with Tommy Edman, but go back and look at Tommy Edman's numbers. Go look at Tommy Edman's hard hit rate. Go look at his extra bases. Go look after about 40 games in the major leagues, go look at his numbers and go look how drastically they've gone down. His power's gone down. His batting average has gone down. His slugging percentage has gone down. It's not pretty. And what we saw, I hope that we see the Tommy Edman that we saw in 2019. But if you go back and look at his minor league stats, he was never that hitter in the minor leagues either. So we'll see. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I hope you are too because, I like the hustle of Tommy Edman. I like everything he does. The only thing is if he's going to play every day, which shouldn't happen, but it's going to have to if you're not going to go out and get another bat, you need to see some production. Also, Scott, you need to see a lot more production from this outfield. I'm not talking about Carlson. I'm talking about guys like Bader. I'm talking about guys like O'Neill, and I'm mainly talking about Lane Thomas. Granted, Lane Thomas had COVID, and we don't know what kind of effect that had on him even when he came back. But you need to see a little more out of these guys if you're going to win anything.
Oh, you have to. There's not you need to. You absolutely have to. This is their chance. They've cleared the deck. There's no Dexter Fowler in the way. It's going to be Dylan Carlson, Harrison Bader, Tyler O'Neill, Lane Thomas, and maybe Justin Williams. Those are going to be your 5 outfielders. And, you're going to get a shot till the trade deadline. And if one of those guys doesn't make it, I think the Cardinals will make a big move at the trade deadline to go get an outfielder. But, the first half of the season, it's going to be their shot to make it or break it. Quick update, SLU just won 78-57 over LaSalle. So big win for SLU. They're 11-3 now.
What about Illinois?
Illinois is still playing. Hang on just a second. It had gotten close. I'll give you an update. Talk for a second, Joe, while I find this score.
Yeah, so it's been a great show tonight, other than, actually it's been a hell of a show tonight. I've had a good time. We're doing some different things here on the show, trying to figure out what's the best structure and everything else, and this seems to be working, so we're going to stick with it.
Yeah, we're on upset alert in Illinois. Illinois is only up by 3. It's 60-57 with about 4 minutes left. Illinois was up by 12, but Northwestern is not going away in this one. So, that would be a huge upset if Illinois would fall to a Northwestern team here tonight.
Where is Northwestern? Are they
Chicago?
No, yeah, but where are they in terms of a program? Where, are they? They're not upper echelon, but good teams.
No, Northwestern's basketball program is not. They're at the bottom of the Big Ten every year.
Every year?
Yeah, I mean they'll have a random year where they're pretty decent, but they're in the lower third of the Big Ten most of the time. They're not a powerhouse. I mean the Big Ten basketball is, Ohio State, Michigan State, Indiana, Iowa, Illinois some years. Big Ten basketball is tough.
Yeah, it is. So, Scott, before we get out of here tonight, there's basically a question here. Should Edman be a hitter more like a Rod Carew type, just a slap hitter and not worry so much about home runs?
Yeah, Tommy Edman's not a home run hitter. He's not. He's not. Tommy Edman needs to not be trying to hit home runs in any way, shape, or form. I'm not trying to be mean. I mean, when you look at his body, he's a little guy. He's a fast guy. You want him to hit line drives. You want him to try to hit the ball in the gap. You definitely don't want him hitting the ball in the air. I mean, Edman's a guy on a good year that's going to give you 8 or 9 home runs on a good year. He's got less power than Colton Wong does by a lot.
Colton Wong had some pop, though. Are you really going to make that comparison?
No, I'm saying that. I mean, Colton Wong had the capability of hitting 14 or 15. Like I said, it wouldn't shock me if he hits 20 in Milwaukee. Tommy Edman on a good day is going to hit 8. So I'm just saying he doesn't have that kind of power.
Tommy Edman has less pop than David Eckstein did. That's just
they'd be similar. I would say they're similar type players, very similar.
Do you think on a good year Eckstein would hit 8 home runs?
He did hit home runs. He hit 10 home runs with the Cardinals.
So yeah, that's a good comparison. Actually, I didn't even realize it. I was just throwing a name out there, a slap hitter that was pesky. So
yeah, and I mean you can have. I mean Edman's got gap power. I mean you would hope that he would have 20 or 25 doubles and hit 6 or 7 triples and 7 or 8 home runs. And if he does that as a leadoff hitter, you're going to be okay with that. If he gets on base. He's got to be able to draw walks, too, which is something that he's not shown the ability to do so far in his career. Sorry, Joe. He's got to have a better on-base percentage than he's shown the ability to have.
The average he needs to be at, though, in my mind, is 280.
I think that's going to be tough. I think he's probably more of a 265, 270 type hitter. But if he can do that and have a 340, 350 on-base percentage, if he can draw some walks, I think you could live with it, but I'm not sure that Tommy Edman's a 280 hitter in the major leagues. All
right. We shall see. But it's been a great show tonight, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in here on ASTV Productions. For Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. We will see you guys tomorrow night.